3 weeks into advanced combat training, the emergency klaxons shattered the morning routine at Kepler Station. Sarah was in the middle of field stripping, her rifle for the daily maintenance ritual when the urgent alarm echoed through the corridors. All advanced combat. Training personnel report to Tactical Command. Immediately, Colonel Vextara's voice carried over the station's communication system. This is not a drill. Sarah secured her rifle and equipment with practice speed, joining the flow of cadets and instructors moving toward the station's command center. The urgency in everyone's movements suggested something significant was happening. The Tactical Command Center was a vast chamber filled with holographic displays showing star charts, fleet positions, and communication feeds from across the sector. When Sarah and her fellow advanced cadets arrived, they found the space buzzing with activity as officers from multiple species coordinated responses to some developing situation. Colonel Vextara stood at the center of it all, her usually calm demeanor showing signs of strain. Master Sergeant Kelter was beside her, his cybernetic enhancements interfacing directly with the command systems to process incoming data streams. "Listen carefully," the colonel announced as the advanced cadets assembled. 16 hours ago, hegemony forces launched a surprise attack on the research station at Epsilon Eridani. The facility houses critical intelligence regarding new defensive technologies, information that cannot be allowed to fall into enemy hands. The main display shifted to show the Epsilon Eridani system, a sparse collection of planets orbiting a dim red star. The research station appeared as a small structure on the second planet, surrounded by the geometric patterns that indicated defensive installations. Standard evacuation protocols failed when hegemony infiltrators disabled the station's shield, generators, and communication arrays. Colonel Vextara continued. A galactic military rescue mission was attempted 12 hours ago using conventional forces. New images appeared on the display. The twisted wreckage of military transport ships scattered across the planet's surface. Sarah counted at least 6 destroyed vessels, their energy signatures cold and dead. The rescue mission failed catastrophically, Master Sergeant Kelter reported, his mechanical voice carrying grim finality. Hegemony forces had prepared comprehensive countermeasures for our standard tactics. Energy weapon signatures were tracked and targeted immediately. Vehicle-mounted systems were destroyed by guided missiles. Infantry formations were broken up by area effect weapons. However, Colonel Vextara said, her melodic voice carrying a note of determination, conventional tactics are not our only option. Sarah felt her heart rate increase as she began to understand where this briefing was leading. The research station contains 37 personnel, including Dr. Kethra Voss, the lead researcher on Project Shadowveil, the colonel continued. Her work on stealth technology is considered vital to the war effort. She and her team are currently barricaded in the station's central laboratory, but their position is untenable. The tactical display zoomed in on the research station's layout. Sarah could see the problem immediately. The laboratory was surrounded by open terrain that provided excellent fields of fire for defending forces, but little cover for anyone attempting a rescue. Hegemony forces have established a perimeter using energy-based detection grids and automated defense systems, Master Sergeant Kelter explained. Any approach using conventional weapons would be detected and neutralized before reaching effective range. Colonel Vextara turned to face the assembled cadets directly. This situation requires capabilities that fall outside standard military doctrine. It requires precision, stealth, and techniques that our enemy will not anticipate. The implication was clear, but Sarah waited for the colonel to make it explicit. Cadet Chun, your sniper techniques may represent our best hope for mission success. Are you prepared to participate in a combat operation? Every eye in the command center focused on Sarah. She thought of her grandfather's lessons, the endless hours of practice, the principles of marksmanship and fieldcraft that had been passed down through generations of human warriors. Ma'am, yes ma'am. What are the mission parameters? Colonel Vextara activated a new section of the tactical display, showing detailed terrain maps of the area around the research station. The mission will be conducted by a small team using unconventional infiltration methods. Your role will be to provide long-range precision fire support to neutralize specific targets that conventional weapons cannot engage. Sarah studied the terrain carefully. The research station sat in a valley surrounded by low hills and rocky outcroppings. The hegemony forces had positioned their automated defense systems on the high ground, creating overlapping fields of fire that would destroy any conventional assault, but from Sarah's perspective, those elevated positions were also exposed. A sniper with the right equipment could engage targets from ranges where return fire would be ineffective. "Ma'am, I'll need to modify my ammunition selection for the expected engagement ranges," Sarah said. "And I'd like permission to fabricate some specialized equipment." "Granted. You have 4 hours before departure. Master Sergeant Kelter will provide any resources you require." The next 4 hours passed in a blur of intense preparation. Sarah worked with the station's fabrication systems to create ammunition, specifically designed for the mission, projectiles with enhanced ballistic coefficients for extreme range work, and specialized rounds designed to defeat the hegemony's advanced armor systems. She also fabricated a ghillie suit using materials that would blend with the rocky terrain around the research station. Her grandfather's lessons had included extensive camouflage techniques, skills that seemed primitive compared to the galactic military's energy-based stealth systems, but which offered advantages that high-tech solutions couldn't match. The infiltration team consisted of 6 members. Sarah as the sniper, 2 Saurian specialists trained in electronic warfare, a Korvaxi demolitions expert, an ethereal reconnaissance specialist whose natural abilities included limited invisibility, and team leader Lieutenant Torres, a human special operations veteran who understood how to coordinate unconventional tactics. Their transport was a modified stealth shuttle, designed to avoid the hegemony's sensor nets. As they approached Epsilon Eridani, Sarah studied the mission briefings one final time, memorizing target priorities and calculating preliminary range estimates. "Remember," Lieutenant Torres addressed the team as they prepared for insertion, "conventional rules of engagement do not apply to this mission. We are operating behind enemy lines using techniques that our own military doctrine considers obsolete. Success depends on doing things that the enemy will not expect." The shuttle's pilot, another human who specialized in low-detection flying techniques, brought them down in a rocky canyon approximately 8 kilometers from the research station. The insertion was flawless, no energy signatures, no detectable heat plumes, just the soft whisper of a craft. Designed to avoid rather than overpower enemy sensors, Sarah immediately began establishing her sniper position on a rocky ridge that provided clear sight lines to the research station. Her weather monitoring equipment confirmed conditions that were challenging but manageable: moderate wind, stable temperature, and atmospheric conditions within acceptable parameters for long-range shooting. Through her scope, she could see the hegemony positions clearly. Their automated defense platforms were sophisticated systems designed to detect and destroy conventional targets, but they were positioned for optimal coverage rather than protection from long-range fire. "Sniper in position," she reported over the team's communication system. "I have visual confirmation on all primary targets." "Copy that, Overwatch," Lieutenant Torres responded, using the cal sign they had assigned to Sarah's position. Beginning approach phase. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. The Saurian electronic warfare specialist would disable the automated defense systems by targeting their power sources. The ethereal would use her natural camouflage abilities to guide the team through the sensor nets. The Korvaxi would create diversions, using explosive charges to draw attention away from the main rescue effort. Sarah's role was to eliminate any hegemony personnel who responded to the incursions, engaging targets at ranges where conventional weapons would be ineffective. The first phase went according to plan. The Saurians successfully penetrated the defense network's computer systems, temporarily blinding the automated sensors. The Ethereal's reconnaissance confirmed the location of the research station's personnel and identified the optimal extraction route, but as Lieutenant Torres had predicted, the enemy adapted quickly to unexpected tactics. Overwatch. "We have hegemony reinforcements moving to intercept the extraction team," came the urgent report. "Multiple personnel, heavily armed, approaching from the northeast." Through her scope, Sarah could see them, 6 hegemony soldiers in advanced combat armor, moving tactically across the open ground between the research station and her team's position. Their energy weapons glowed with contained power, and their movement patterns suggested extensive combat experience. "Range to targets?" Lieutenant Torres asked. Sarah consulted her rangefinder and environmental readings. 2,847 meters to the lead target. The Advanced Combat Training Facility occupied an entire level of Kepler Station, its corridors wider and better equipped than the standard cadet areas. Sarah arrived at precisely 0600 hours, her modified rifle case slung over her shoulder and her weather monitoring equipment secured in a tactical pack. She wasn't alone. 12 other cadets had been selected for advanced training, representing the top performers from each species group. They stood in a loose formation outside the main briefing chamber, their conversations muted but intense. Zexhai was there, his compound eyes avoiding direct contact with Sarah. The proud Thurkari had scored well enough to qualify, but his earlier mockery had clearly left him uncomfortable. Beside him stood Vorthuk, the Saurian scales displaying the pale coloration that indicated uncertainty among his species. The massive Korvaxi from yesterday's evaluation nodded respectfully to Sarah as she joined the group. "I am Thora Ka," he rumbled through his translator. "Your shooting yesterday was ... educational." Before Sarah could respond, the briefing chamber doors slid open with a soft hiss. Master Sergeant Kelter emerged, but he wasn't alone. Behind him walked a figure that made several cadets stiffen to attention. Colonel Vexthara was a legend throughout the galactic military. The tall, graceful Eldari had commanded successful campaigns across 3 sectors, her tactical innovations studied in war colleges throughout known space. Her species was ancient, their technology so advanced it appeared almost magical to younger races. She wore the simple uniform of her rank, but the authority in her bearing was unmistakable. "Advanced combat training," Colonel Vexthara announced as the cadets filed into the briefing chamber, "is not simply about superior marksmanship or faster reflexes. It is about understanding warfare at levels that standard training cannot reach." The chamber's walls transformed into a 3-dimensional tactical display, showing star systems, fleet movements, and ground operations across multiple theaters of conflict. Sarah recognized some of the battles, famous engagements from the recent wars. "Against the hegemony forces, each of you has demonstrated exceptional ability in your initial evaluations," the colonel continued. "But ability alone is insufficient. Modern warfare requires adaptation, innovation, and sometimes the willingness to abandon conventional wisdom." Her gaze swept across the assembled cadets, pausing briefly on each one before settling on Sarah. "Yesterday's marksmanship evaluation produced some interesting results. Results that have prompted significant discussion among the Academy's senior staff." Sarah felt the attention of the other cadets focusing on her, but she maintained her composure. Whatever was coming, she had been expecting it since leaving the firing range. "Cadet Chun," Colonel Vexthara said, "please bring your equipment to the front of the chamber." Sarah complied, setting up her rifle case and weather monitoring system on the demonstration table. Under the intense lighting, her weapon looked even more primitive compared to the advanced technology surrounding it. "Can you explain to your fellow cadets why you chose this particular weapon configuration?" Sarah stood at attention. "Ma'am, this rifle represents a synthesis of traditional human marksmanship, principles with modern materials and precision manufacturing. The projectile system allows for consistent ballistic performance across varied environmental conditions, while the modular design permits real-time adjustments for range, wind, temperature, and atmospheric density. Colonel Vextara nodded slowly. And the theoretical maximum effective range of this system? Ma'am, under optimal conditions with appropriate ammunition selection, confirmed kills have been recorded at ranges exceeding 3,000 meters. The chamber fell silent. Even the advanced energy weapons carried by most military forces were considered accurate only to about 1,500 meters under ideal conditions. 3,000 meters, repeated Vorthok, his scales shifting to deeper colors that indicated profound skepticism. That's impossible. At that distance, you can't even see the target without mechanical assistance. Sarah remained silent, waiting for permission to respond. Colonel Vextara gestured for her to continue. Sir, long-range marksmanship isn't about seeing the target in conventional terms. It's about understanding ballistics, atmospheric conditions, and the physical properties of projectile flight. My weapon system incorporates environmental monitoring, ballistic computation, and precision optics to create what humans call a sniper system. Sniper, Colonel Vextara repeated the word, her melodic Eldari accent giving it an almost musical quality. Master Sergeant Kelter, perhaps you could explain the significance of that term? Kelter stepped forward, his mechanical components whirring softly. Colonel, sniper is a human military designation for specialized marksmen trained in long-range precision shooting, camouflage, reconnaissance, and target elimination. The term originated from human conflicts on their homeworld, but the techniques have been refined over centuries of warfare. If the tactical display shifted, showing historical human conflicts, images of camouflaged soldiers in ghillie suits, precision rifles, and impossible shots taken across vast distances. The alien cadets watched with growing amazement and unease. Human sniper teams, Kelter continued, are trained to operate independently for extended periods, often behind enemy lines. They combine marksmanship skills with fieldcraft, intelligence gathering, and psychological warfare. A single human sniper team can influence the outcome of battles involving thousands of troops. Zexhia's compound eyes glittered with confusion. But why use primitive projectile weapons when energy systems offer superior firepower and reliability? This time, Colonel Vextara answered. Because, Cadet, projectile weapons offer advantages that energy systems cannot match. They produce no electromagnetic signature, require no power cells, generate minimal heat, and can be fired without revealing the shooter's position to most detection systems. She activated another section of the tactical display, showing sensor readings from the previous day's evaluation. During yesterday's testing, Cadet Chen's rifle produced virtually no detectable energy signature, while your plasma and particle weapons created sensor ghosts visible to our monitoring systems. Her position remained undetectable except for the muzzle flash, which lasted less than a millisecond. The implications began to sink in among the advanced cadets. In modern warfare, energy weapons were tracked by their power signatures, their heat generation, their electromagnetic emissions. A weapon that produced none of these signatures would be essentially invisible to most military sensors. There's more, Colonel Vextara continued. Master Sergeant Kelter, show them the ballistic analysis. The display changed again, this time showing the flight path of Sarah's projectiles from the 800-meter shots. The trajectory was a perfect arc, compensating for gravity, wind drift, and atmospheric conditions with mathematical precision. Standard military doctrine teaches that projectile weapons are obsolete, Kelter explained, because they require complex calculations to account for environmental factors. Energy weapons travel at light speed and are largely unaffected by atmospheric conditions. However, Colonel Vextara interjected, projectile weapons offer two critical advantages. First, they are kinetic systems. Their effectiveness is based on mass and velocity rather than energy density. This makes them effective against many forms of energy shielding that would deflect plasma or particle beams. Sarah felt a surge of pride at hearing her grandfather's lessons, validated by one of the most respected officers in the galactic military. Second, And perhaps more importantly, projectile weapons can be made effectively silent. Energy weapons produce characteristic sounds, the hum of charging capacitors, the crackle of plasma discharge, the whine of particle acceleration. Cadet Chun's rifle produces only the brief sound of a supersonic projectile breaking the sound barrier. Thorka raised a massive paw. Colonel, if these human sniper techniques are so effective, why aren't they standard throughout the military? Colonel Vexthara smiled, a rare expression for the usually stoic Eldari. An excellent question. The answer reveals much about the nature of warfare and technological evolution. The tactical display shifted once more, showing the development of military technology across different species. Energy weapons dominated the charts: plasma rifles, particle cannons, photon projectors. Gravitational disruptors? Most species, the colonel explained, develop energy-based weapons as their technology advances. These weapons offer obvious advantages: consistent power, reliable performance, minimal ammunition requirements. But in focusing on energy systems, most military forces have forgotten the fundamental principles of stealth and precision that projectile weapons represent. She gestured to Sarah's rifle. Humans developed their sniper techniques during periods of technological limitation. They were forced to maximize the effectiveness of primitive systems through skill, preparation, and tactical innovation. When they achieved advanced technology, they retained these techniques and enhanced them rather than abandoning them. The other cadets were now studying Sarah's equipment with new respect. Her weather monitoring system, which had seemed so primitive the day before, was actually a sophisticated environmental analysis tool. Her rifle's complex adjustments allowed for precise compensation of factors that energy will. The Galactic Military Academy's firing range buzzed with nervous energy as cadets from 17 different species prepared for their first marksmanship evaluation. The massive underground facility stretched for kilometers beneath Kepler Station, its walls lined with adaptive armor plating that could withstand even plasma artillery strikes. Lieutenant Sarah Chun adjusted the scope on her modified rifle for the third time, ignoring the curious stares and barely concealed snickers from her fellow cadets. Her weapon looked nothing like the standard-issue pulse rifles that dominated the range. Where others carried sleek, energy-based weapons with glowing power cells and holographic displays, Sarah's rifle appeared almost primitive by comparison. The weapon was longer than regulation, with an unusual bipod system that folded in 3 sections rather than 2. Strange attachments dotted its length, a peculiar muzzle device that wasn't quite a suppressor, an oversized scope that seemed too large for the weapon's frame, and a stock that could apparently adjust in multiple dimensions, most bizarre of all was the ammunition system. Instead of standard energy cells, Sarah's rifle used what appeared to be physical projectiles loaded one by one. "Look at the human's antique," chittered Zexhai, a mantis-like Thurkari whose compound eyes glittered with amusement. His own weapon hummed with contained plasma energy, its surface covered in bioluminescent patterns that pulsed with each heartbeat. "Did she bring that from a museum?" The joke spread quickly through the diverse group of cadets. A massive Corvaxi, one of the bear-like species from the outer rim, let out a rumbling laugh that shook the floor plates. "My ancestors used better weapons during the Stone Wars," he growled, his translator making his native language sound like distant thunder. "At least their spears had sharp points." Even the usually reserved ethereal delegation couldn't hide their amusement. These pale, elongated beings rarely showed emotion, but Sarah caught several exchanging what passed for smirks among their species. Their weapons seemed to be made of pure light, shifting and reshaping according to some unknown principle that hurt to look at directly. Sarah said nothing, continuing her methodical preparation. She pulled out what looked like a small weather station, setting it on the bench beside her position. The device immediately began taking readings: wind speed, humidity, atmospheric pressure, temperature gradients. Her fellow cadets found this even more amusing than her rifle. "What's next?" called out Vorthok, a scaled saurian whose species prided themselves on their natural accuracy. "Going to read tea leaves to predict where your shots will go?" The laughter grew louder. Several cadets had pulled out their personal recording devices, apparently documenting what they assumed would be an embarrassing failure. The Galactic Academy's evaluation system was notoriously harsh. Those who failed the marksmanship test would be transferred to support divisions, ending any hope of combat roles. Attention, cadets. The voice cut through the chatter like a plasma blade through soft metal. Master Sergeant Kelter strode onto the range, his cybernetic implants gleaming under the harsh lighting. The grizzled Zentarian had lost most of his original body during the siege of Proxima, but his replacement parts moved with mechanical precision that spoke of decades adapting to his enhanced form. Today's evaluation will test your ability to engage targets at various ranges and environmental conditions. Kelter announced, his artificial voice carrying to every corner of the vast space. You will face standard humanoid targets at 100, 300, 500, and 800 meters. Additionally, there will be moving targets, obscured targets, and targets in adverse weather simulation. The sergeant's red optical sensors swept across the assembled cadets, pausing briefly on Sarah's unusual setup before continuing. Each cadet will fire in sequence, starting with close range and progressing to distance shots. Scoring will be based on accuracy, speed, and adaptability to changing conditions. Sarah noticed that Kelter's gaze lingered on her rifle longer than the others, but his expression, what remained of his organic face, gave nothing away. The first cadet up was HFY, who approached the firing line with confidence bordering on arrogance. Thrakari were natural hunters, their compound eyes capable of tracking multiple targets simultaneously. His plasma rifle whined as it charged, and he proceeded to deliver a respectable performance, hitting most targets within acceptable parameters. The Kovacsy cadet followed, his massive frame absorbing the recoil of his heavy pulse cannon like it was nothing. His shots were powerful enough to completely vaporize the closer targets, drawing approving nods from the watching instructors. One by one, the cadets took their turns. The ethereals demonstrated otherworldly precision, their light-based weapons leaving perfectly circular holes in the targets. The Saurians relied on their enhanced reflexes, snapping off quick shots with mechanical accuracy. As Sarah's turn approached, the mockery intensified. Cadets who had already finished gathered behind the firing line, their weapons forgotten as they prepared to witness what they expected to be a spectacular failure. Maybe she's planning to throw rocks next, whispered someone in the crowd, drawing fresh laughter. Perhaps it's some primitive human ritual, added another voice. They're known for their strange customs. Sarah finally stood and approached the firing line. Her movements were deliberate, unhurried. She set up her bipod with practiced ease, the unusual three-section design allowing her to adjust not just height but also cant and stability. The weather station's readings appeared on a small display mounted to her scope, numbers that meant nothing to the watching aliens but clearly held significance for her. At the 100-meter mark, holographic targets materialized, standard humanoid silhouettes with scoring zones marked in different colors. Sarah settled behind her rifle, her body language shifting from casual preparation to focused intensity. The first shot surprised everyone. Instead of the bright flash and electrical discharge of energy weapons, Sarah's rifle produced only a sharp crack that echoed off the range walls. The sound was alien to most of the cadets who were used to the hum and sizzle of plasma fire, but the result was undeniable. The target's center zone, a circle barely larger than a coin, showed a perfect hole. Lucky shot, muttered Vorthak, but his tone lacked conviction. Sarah's second shot followed quickly, striking the same target in the exact same spot. The third shot landed so close to the first two that from a distance, it appeared to be the same hole. The laughter began to die down. At 300 meters, new targets appeared, smaller and partially obscured by holographic obstacles. Sarah made minute adjustments to her scope, consulting readings that updated in real time on her display. Her shots came slower now, each one preceded by a moment of absolute stillness. Every shot was perfect. The range fell silent except for the crack of Sarah's rifle and the soft hum of the target systems. Even the instructors had stopped their casual conversations to watch. At 500 meters, Environmental conditions changed. Artificial wind kicked up, strong enough to affect projectile flight paths. Shifting light patterns created shadows and glare. Temperature fluctuations caused air density variations that would throw off most weapons. Sarah consulted her weather station again, making what appeared to be mental calculations. She adjusted something on her scope, multiple somethings actually, turning knobs and sliding adjustments that the other cadets couldn't even identify. Her first shot at 500 meters struck dead center. The second hit the same spot. By the third shot, Master Sergeant Kelter had moved closer to the firing line, his optical sensors focused intently on Sarah's rifle and technique. Impossible, breathed Zexhai, his compound eyes straining to see the distant targets. No one shoots that accurately at 500 meters. The atmospheric distortion alone should scatter the shots. But Sarah wasn't done. The 800-meter targets rose from the floor like metal flowers blooming in reverse. At this distance, the targets appeared as tiny dots even through the cadets' enhanced vision systems. Most weapons couldn't effectively engage targets at such range, especially under the current environmental conditions. Sarah took longer now, her preparation methodical and precise. She adjusted her position, fine-tuned her rifle's complex array of settings, and spent nearly a minute simply observing the conditions. Wind patterns, air temperature layers, even the subtle vibrations from the station's life support systems all seemed to factor into her calculations. When she finally fired, the shot seemed to hang in the air forever before finding its mark. Perfect center hit. The second shot followed the same pattern, long preparation, careful calculation, then execution that defied belief. On the third shot, something extraordinary happened. Sarah had been firing what appeared to be single projectiles, but at the moment her rifle cracked, she immediately worked some kind of mechanism and fired again. The two shots were so close together that many cadets thought they heard an echo. Both shots struck the 800-meter target simultaneously, creating a single, perfectly centered hole. The range fell into complete silence. Master Sergeant Kelter stepped forward, his mechanical voice carrying clearly in the hushed space. "Cadet Chin, remain on the line. All other cadets return to your quarters for debriefing." As the other cadets filed out, their earlier mockery replaced by confused whispers, Kelter approached Sarah's position, his optical